Good morning. This is VirtualPBX admin training. The training lasts about an hour and a half. We do record these trainings, so if you can't stay for the entire time, that is fine. You can always come back later and watch the rest of it. Feel free to make use of the YouTube chat feature to ask any questions about a feature as I am talking about it, and I'll try to address it at that time. But it's 10 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. So here you see our dash login screen, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. You can also get there at the from the virtualpbx.com website. There's a blue bar towards the top of the web pages on the website that has a login link there. I do recommend bookmarking this page just so you have easy access to it in the future. To get logged in, we need 3 pieces of information. The first is your email address that you use to sign up with us or that your admin used to create your user. Your password, which should have been emailed to you. And then lastly, the account name, which is typically your company name. Now, if you have trouble logging in, right down here, above the sign-in bar, there's a forgot your info link. So you can click on that, flip it over. No matter what, we still need your email address. Main thing to remember about the email address is to make sure that it is all in lowercase. And then in terms of recovery, we need either the account name, so again, the company name, or a phone number on the account. One of those 2 pieces of information. Click on reset password. Now, the system will send you an email, and in the body of that email, there'll be a link. Right? That link will get you logged in right to your user page, and that will allow you to change your password. Anything else, if you try to do anything else, the system will log you out. And after you change your password, the system will also log you back out and take you back here to the login page, where you then use that new password. And then you also have the option here to click on Remember Me. And then, whoops, get logged in. There we go. Now I'm using a test account that I have logged into several times. So by default, after I get logged in, it takes me right here to the dashboard page. For you, if it's your first time logging in, the system will actually take you to your account page, and the dash wizard will pop up, right, giving you little pop-up boxes telling you what's going on or what certain features are. If you ever need to get back to that account page, like you want to change your own password, for example, up here at the top right, click on your name. And here I am on my account page. And again, most common thing here is people change their passwords. Now, as an admin, I also have access here to the account level settings. Most commonly changed thing is time zone or possibly the display language. These are pull down, so you can do a search for the appropriate time zone. If you need to change your account name, you actually need to contact our billing team. That's billing, BILLING, at virtualpbx.com. There's several things that they need to change on their side to make sure everything syncs up properly. Once you're done here, click on the little close box here towards the top right, and then you'll be here on the dashboard page. The dash wizard pop-ups will continue on this page as well. And they'll also continue on the users page and the groups page. Now up here on the top, again, you click on your name at any time, get back to that user page to change your password. This next, many of you actually to the right of your name will have a D&D toggle. D&D standing for Do Not Disturb. So you can click on that to not receive calls. The reason my user does not have it is I am a member of the call queues or the ACD queues. And those 2 features do not play well together. So once a user is added to the queues, that D&D toggle is removed. Next up, I have a little phone icon here. This shows up once you've added the web phone VoIP device to your user. And then when you click on it, it opens up a new tab and takes you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. This allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. So it is a VoIP phone. But again, it has to be added to your user first before it shows up here. Little graduation cap icon. When you click on this, this will open a new tab and take you to our support pages. Right, so the various guides we have for the various features. The majority of the guides do have screenshots, and some of them have videos as well. Moving further to the right, we got the little chat bubble. This will open up a chat window so you can speak to our support team via live chat, and they can walk you through particular guides or features. Then we got the 3 horizontal line icon up here at the top right. This is the menu icon. Right? This will allow you to get to other dash features. The majority of our training will be here on the dashboard, which is this first item here on the top left of the pull-down menu. But we'll touch on these other subjects as well. And then we have the little arrow pointing to the right. That's the logout icon. Down here towards the center, I have total users. I have 23. Right? So I have 23 people on my account. People typically to make and receive calls. Most of our plans are based on a per user basis. So the more users you have, the higher your bill. Next up, I have total devices, 49, and then a breakdown. First up is a soft phone. This is a software application on a computer, tablet, cell phone, uses the internet connection of that device to make and receive calls. This includes the VirtualPBX soft phone or any third-party soft phone apps you might be using. Next up, cell phone. Most of us know what a cell phone is. And then the third item here is a SIP phone. This is a particular piece of hardware. So it's a phone, sits on your desk, typically connects via Ethernet to get to your internet connection, and then you use that to make and receive calls. Again, so it's a kind of VoIP phone, right? So VoIP, general term, right? Voice over Internet Protocol just means using your internet connection to make and receive calls. There are several subtypes of VoIP phones. So when you're out shopping, you want to make sure you're looking for SIP compatible or SIP compliant phones. Generally, if you're coming from an environment that has a unified communications platform, right? So like Cisco has that kind of thing. I think Avaya does well. Right? Those phones are usually geared to work specifically with specific server hardware, right? So those cases, those phones may not work with us. You might have to do a firmware upgrade to get them to be SIP phones specifically. Next up, I have the web phone, right? That's Chrome or Firefox on a computer, make and receive calls. Technically, it's a kind of soft phone, but it was added on later or developed later, and so it has a separate heading. Down here, I have unregistered devices. This means 2 of my phones have been disabled under my devices tab. Basically, I chose basically to turn them off, or an admin chose to turn them off. Next, I have total numbers. I have 36 phone numbers. Again, each plan, you have a number of phone numbers included as part of your monthly plan price. If you go over that, you're going to be charged on a per number basis per month. It's going to vary by plan. If you just signed up with us, then it's, from what I've seen on our pricing page, is $1.99 per phone number extra per month. Now here, we have a breakdown of assigned numbers and spare numbers. An assigned number means you're using it, right? It goes someplace. Someone can call it and expect to speak to somebody or leave a voicemail, join a conference, or be sending a fax. Spare number counts towards your allotment of numbers, right? It's still on your account, but you're not currently using it. Maybe you grabbed a number to, expand into a new market, right? So you're based in, say, Atlanta, and you're opening a new location, say, in Raleigh, North Carolina, right? Different area code. You want to get that number first so you can start getting your market materials all set, but you don't want that number ringing yet because there's no one at that location. or you have a promotion that just ended and you took that number out of service, so that way you're not getting calls about a promotion that's not running, etc. Down here, we have USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free actually is US Canada toll-free. It's a 1-800 number, an 888 number, all the way down to 833 currently. USDID just means a US local number, right? So say a number in Atlanta, Georgia, and a number in Raleigh, North Carolina, right? Those are both USDIDs. You can have international phone numbers if you're so interested. You would need to email our porting team, and that's porting@virtualpbx.com. They need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in, and they will let you know if it's possible and or if there's any additional requirements, right? Those additional requirements are going to vary from country to country, right? Some countries don't care, others are pretty strict. Down here I have conference bridges. I have 7, and that means I've enabled the conference feature on 7 of my users, right? So these are the people who moderate or host conferences. The main thing to remember is that feature cannot be enabled on a user until you have a conference number enabled on the account. Now we're going to go over here towards the top right where I have this main number box. And it looks like I've got 7 phone numbers here. So these 7 phone numbers, they all behave the same way, right? They're all going to go to the same location. They're all going to have the same main greeting, for example. So obviously you can have multiple numbers. You can choose not to have a main number if you don't want to. Conference numbers, you can have multiple conference room numbers if you want. They all go to the same set of conference rooms, so it doesn't really matter. But this number is what everyone dials to join the conference, right? So staff members, clients, vendors all dial that number, and then they'll be prompted to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. Next up, the fax box number. You can have one main fax box number, and this is your inbound fax number. Once you set up the fax box, you can also then set it up for outbound faxing. We have the company directories. There's 2 different download links here. The CSV file is a spreadsheet file, right? You download it to your device, use your favorite spreadsheet program. It's going to have the names of all your staff members, their extension numbers, and their primary devices. The soft phone download link here, this is specifically for use with the VirtualPBX desktop soft phone application, right? So if you're using our soft phone application on a Windows or Mac PC, you can download this file and then upload it to our soft phone app. And this will allow you to see the status of the other soft phones on your account. Well, the other VirtualPBX soft phones on your account, right? So if everyone is, the only device they have is the VirtualPBX soft phone, then you see who's on a call and who's not. If you have a mix of devices, then you only see the status of the soft phone. You won't be able to see the status of, like, say, if my coworker Mike is using his Yealing phone, I can't tell, right? Likewise, if my colleague Bob is who took a call on his cell phone, I'm not going to be able to see the status of that either via my soft phone. VirtualPBX store, this opens a link to our store page, so you can order a VoIP phone, router, etc. And then the account realm, each account has its own account realm. You use this for a couple different things. The first is if you're making use of a third-party soft phone, this is one of the 3 pieces of information you would need to get that soft phone to work with us. The other thing it's used for is to send an outbound fax. So once you have your fax box set up, you don't need to log into your Dash account to send a fax, right? All you need to do is create an email like you normally do. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, the area code and phone number you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF file, right? So the system will not look at the subject line of the email. It doesn't look at the body of the email. It looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachment. It will only accept 1 attachment, right? So if you try to send 3 documents in one email, only one of them will go through, right? And the system doesn't actually tell you which one. It just says, hey, your fax went through. So 1 email per, or 1 attachment per email. Obviously, if you have a signature file attachment as part of your email, you want to make sure you remove that as well. All right. So over here on the left, we have these tabs that go to different features of the dashboard. Along the top here, I have the caller ID. If I click on this, this is your company caller ID. It doesn't work on this streaming software, but this pull down shows all your main numbers. Right? So that block of 7 numbers, I can choose any one of those numbers to be my default number. Right, and that's what so this number, for instance, becomes the default number for my VoIP phones when they make an outbound call. This becomes their default caller ID. Also becomes a default for a couple other things. Next up, we have the caller ID name. This is a optional feature. This allows you to enter up to 15 characters. That includes special characters or spaces that you would then basically gets transmitted out as part of your outbound caller ID. Then the system will want you to enter in your company emergency information, or E911. What's a North American address? And then you click on Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, if you entered information here in the company caller ID name, or CNAME, right, that gets transmitted to the other carriers who support this feature. It takes them about 3 business days to update their servers. Sometimes it's a little faster, but 3 days is the longest we've seen. Some things to know about the CNAME feature. It's not a guarantee, right? So one, when you make an outbound call, it's possible that as your call gets routing out to its destination, one of the carriers between us and that destination may not support CNAME, which means your CNAME information doesn't make it to the end anyway. If all the carriers do support it, when they reach that end destination, that last carrier, they get final say about what shows up on the phones on their network, right? So call comes in, choose whatever carrier it is. They decide, okay, we'll accept that information, transmit it to their phone, right? So that means the information we sent gets all the way through. They can opt instead to say, well, we don't like your information. We'll send the number through, and we're going to look up our own set of databases and see what we have for that number and put that instead as the company caller ID name. Or they can say, we're not going to send CNAME at all. We're just sending the number only. This is especially true when calling cell phones, right? Most cell phone providers only will send the number through. And in fact, like my carrier, they wanted to charge me an extra $10 a month to have the ability to have the company caller ID name show up on every call that shows up on my cell phone. I wasn't willing to pay that. I'm guessing that's fairly similar response most people have when dealing with their cell phone providers. Next up is hold music. So on Dash, you can upload your own media files. It will play back .wav and .mp3 files. You would just click the upload button here, find the file on your computer, and then click the up arrow icon. You're limited to 1 megabyte in file size. So because of that, I do recommend recording in mono and not in stereo, because that will give you some more length of the file. A 1 megabyte MP3 is roughly 5 minutes. And then you would click on Save Changes. This becomes the default hold music for all your users. And what this means is when a call comes into your account, right, reaches a user, and the user picks up, if they press the hold button on their VoIP phone, this is the file that will play. Now, hours is part of main number, which we'll be getting to shortly, but I'm going to skip down to users. So this is your user page. A person with a gray person icon, that's just your standard user. They have very limited access. People with the blue suit here, they're just an admin, right? They're doing all the stuff we're talking about here. Up the top is where you add new staff members, and you basically fill out the form, right? First name, pretty easy. Last name should be pretty easy. The email address used for login, this needs to be unique for each user. You cannot reuse an email address for multiple staff members. This email address is what the system uses to communicate with users, right? So for like voicemail notifications, password resets, that's the email address it uses. Next up, we have the password. Just type in a password you want to use for the user. They'll be able to change that later. Their main extension number. Now the system here is sorry. So this account started with extension 1000, right? That's what the initial system admin started off with. So the system here is telling me for a new user, it's recommending the next available one is 1017, right? I can change this, right? I can say, oh, I want to do 7890. And that's a perfectly fine extension number. Now, if you just signed up with us, right, and you're the only user on your account, you want to make sure you assign an extension number to your user, and I'll get to that shortly. Over here, next up, this first checkbox, create a voicemail box for the user. That voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user, right? So if you create a user, you add a VoIP phone, they can pick up their VoIP phone, dial *98, and that will log them directly into their voicemail box. The system will then walk them through creating a PIN number for their voicemail box, as well as creating their voicemail box greeting. Right, so then they're basically all set up. Here's your option to include the user in the user directory. Let's put a check mark here. You can change this later at any time. Here's an option to send emails to an alternate address. So if you want the notifications from the system to go to a different email address than the one they used to sign in with, then you would put a check mark here and then enter this different email address here. Right? If it's the same email address, you don't need to bother with this feature. And then here is the option to send credentials to the user. I do recommend putting a check mark here. So that way they get an email walking them into Dash. It gives them their login information, etc. And if you're only creating one user, just click on Create User. Otherwise, if you have to add multiple, create user and add another. All right. So if you just have that one user, right, you just signed up with us, what you would want to do is across from your name, click on your extension box, and then click on Add an Extension and give yourself an extension number. Again, you can number it any way you want, and then click on Save Changes. That allows you, A, to have an extension number, but B, it also allows you to enable the voicemail feature. You need an extension number in order to have a voicemail box. Now, once users are created in general, you can click on their name. So you can change their name if you need to. Right here is where you would change their login credentials, right? So you can change their email address, you can change their password. You can also have the system send them the password reset email. If you need to change the voicemail box PIN number, you can do so here. Just enter a 4-digit number and then click Save Changes. Here's your option to send emails to an alternate address. Right, here's the option to be in the user directory or not. Now over here on the right little person icon here, this is where you change a user into an admin or an admin into a user. Then the next icon here, this is the time zone. Right, so you can set the time zone for the user to their specific time zone. Right, so that way their voicemail timestamps are correct, for example. Little flag icon here, this pull down, you can change the display language of the web pages for this user, right? So you have the choices of English, French, German, or Russian, right? So if someone's more comfortable with French, German, or Russian instead of English, you can change it for them, and then it would show up in that language. The ringing timeout by default is 20 seconds. On Aaron here, it's grayed out because he has a user feature enabled called Follow Me. So that is taking care of his ring duration. 20 seconds, plenty of time for calls to go to a landline or a VoIP phone. If a user is only using cell phones, you would want to increase this to at least 30 seconds. Right. So for any user, they can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. Users can also have their own phone numbers. Right. So you have the option here from add from spare or buy new. right? Add from spare, this is where you are how you reuse a phone number, right? So these are my available phone numbers that I already have on my account. So I could assign, like, say, the 703 number and just add selected. And now Aaron here has 2 numbers, right? Or I can just unassign it, save changes, and now he only has 1. Now, if instead I want him to have a brand new number, so let's say this user JTest here, right, doesn't have a number. I want him to have a new number. I have options of local or toll free. Toll free, 800 number, right? 888, 82, blah, blah, blah. Now, you choose the prefix you want to work with, and you'll get a list of numbers that will populate. And you can scroll down until you find a number you like. You can add multiple at the same time for most locations. Just keep the one thing to know is that this list is dynamic, meaning you're technically competing with other people in real time. So if, for instance, I like this first number here, when you add it to their cart, you haven't done anything. You haven't reserved the number or anything. It's just saying it's waiting for you to complete the whole process. So if I went away, let's say my boss said, hey, I need you in this meeting right now. I get dragged into a meeting that lasts way too long. And I come back and I click by numbers, it's possible I'll get an error message because someone else went through, added the number, and clicked by numbers and completed the process. Right. So once I click by numbers, the system verifies the number was truly available, and then it is going to activate it and add it to this place that I specified. And you see it here, and then I would click on Save Changes. Right, so now this user has their own phone number. Now, these phone numbers are available 24/7, right? They don't have hours of operation or anything like that. So that's something to be aware of. The devices tab here, or devices column for a user, this is where you can add a device directly to a user, which is what I prefer to do. But basically, you click on new devices and you have several options. The first one is SIP phone. This is that physical hardware. You have these manufacturers to choose from, right? Some of them have a lot of phone models to choose from. Some do not. But basically what you want to do is find the make and model of the phone you want to work with. And then down here, you give it a name, right? Bob's phone, right? Or warehouse phone or whatever. Just something so it's easier to identify. I personally dislike seeing accounts that have like phone 1, 2, 3, 4 or phone A, B, C. Basically because 6 months from now, if you have a new person handling your phone system, they're not going to know where those phones really go. Whereas if it says Bob's phone, like, oh, I know Bob. Okay, this is his phone. Great, easy to find. Then here you've got the MAC address. This is unique to each device, right? It's going to be a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone's plugged in, usually under status or basic settings, you'll find the MAC address there. You enter it here, and then you click on Create Device. Now, once the device is created on the user, the next thing you would need to do is come back into it. So you click on the device box, click on the device itself, go to Advanced, and select the Miscellaneous. And where it says Allow Reprovision here, you want to click on this Unlock box. And then you would click on Save Changes. Now, as far as our dashboard is concerned, you're completely done. However, you need to get in that phone's web user interface and go to its auto provisioning tab and enter a URL. Basically, you're telling the phone, hey, go here to get your config file. For the specifics of that, you want to go to our support pages, do a search for auto provisioning, and that will take you to the auto provisioning phones document. It's going to have screenshots for these various manufacturers and the proper syntax for that URL, and in some cases, some settings to double check. Wait, you go through all of that, the phone's going to reboot a couple times, right? I'm not a patient person, so to me, it always takes longer than it should. But give it like 5-10 minutes range. Go get some coffee, come back, and then it should show up as a green device. Right? Green lets you know it's registered. Red means it's not. Black means it was been turned off. All right. The next up we have cell phone, and cell phone and landline are basically the same, right? You click on it, you give it a name, right? So like Bob's cell phone. You can just put Bob's phone. Then you put the number. In this case, it's +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And then you click on create device and then save changes. So if we go up here to Aaron real quick, we'll click on this demo device. So this is basically what it should look like, right? So name of the phone, +1 area code and number. We go to advanced and settings. I click check mark there. This is the default setup for a newly added cell phone or landline. So when we send a call to a cell phone or landline, that's the endpoint, right? It's an end destination, right? So that means basically if I receive a call on my cell phone, I can't transfer that call to anyone else on my account. Now, when my cell phone rings, right, I pick up. By default, I'm going to hear, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. When I press 1, I'm telling the system, yes, I'm there, and yes, I want to take the call. Right? So that works great for any call that's actually going to a person. Now, let's say you have contracted out with an automated answering service, right? So like, hey, we'll take your calls that are after hours, and we'll handle it. Here's a phone number to send the calls to this phone number. So in that case, right, you would add that device just either as a cell phone or a landline. But what you would want to do is come here to this advanced tab and click in front of allow use of cell phones voicemail, right? An automated answering system doesn't have fingers, right? Doesn't know when to press 1. So what you do here by putting the check mark here for in front of allow use of cell phones voicemail, all you're telling the system is that when you send the call out to that phone number, when you hear that pickup tone, connect the call, right? So there's no message about this is a forwarded call, please press 1. There's no need for the receiving person to press 1. They just have to pick up. Now, if this is actually going to a cell phone, right? So let's say it's going to Aaron's cell phone. What could happen is his cell phone voicemail could pick up. That's still a pickup tone. And with this setting in place, right, we hear the pickup tone, the system sends that inbound caller to Aaron's cell phone's voicemail, right? Some people want that. Some people definitely do not. They want it to go to the system unit voicemail. Here, keep original caller ID. So by default, this is on. And what that means is when, say, customer Mary is calling in, rings to your cell phone, on your cell phone's display, you see customer Mary's phone number. Now, if you get lots of robo-dialers and telemarketers, if you don't recognize the number, you might let it go to voicemail. And that might delay or even prevent you from, helping the customer, right? Completing a sale, what have you. So you can uncheck this, right? You would click on Save Changes. And instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number, you go back to the dashboard. Right? This phone number that you selected, that's the phone number that would show up on your cell phone's display. So hopefully you would recognize your main number on your account and say, oh, this is a work call, let me take it, assuming it's safe to do so, right? You're not driving or something. All right, next up for devices, we have soft phone. So on the first, you get this for any soft phone or web phone, you're always going to get this warning message. I do recommend you read it once at least. But then you close, and then it's going to default you here to adding a third-party soft phone, right? So that means third-party just means someone else's soft phone, right? Not a VirtualPBX soft phone. Now, if you want to add a VirtualPBX soft phone, you have to start here on the users page, right? Click on their device box, click on new device like I did. I select the soft phone, and down here, right? So where it says below view configuration, there's a little toggle. It's grayed out, it's kind of hard to read, but it says use third-party application. Click on that, and it flips it and makes it much easier to read now, and it says use VirtualPBX application. You give it a name, you click on create device, and then you click on save changes. When you click on save changes, you'll get an email saying your VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. It's going to have the login information for your soft phone, and it's going to have download links, right? So you can get the app for either your cell phone or your computer. right? If you add a soft phone on the devices tab over on the left-hand side, right? So this tab over here, the third one or fourth one down, right? You won't have the option for that toggle, right? That toggle won't show up. You're only adding a third-party soft phone. The soft phones are associated with the email address of the user, right? So basically, one soft phone per email address. You can use a VirtualPBX soft phone on multiple devices, however, only one at a time, right? So if I'm using it on my computer, and then I want to switch and use it to my cell phone, I need to log out of the app on my computer before I log into the app on my cell phone. Right? And that comes down to how networking works. Basically, each device has its own address / own location. So trying to route calls to two locations at the same time doesn't work as far as networking data goes. The other device you should that I always find easiest to add on a user is the web phone. It's pretty simple. It's give it a name, click on create device, click on save changes. The reason you want to add it directly to a user is the web phone uses the -users login, right? So if you go to webphone.virtualpbx.net, you'll see right off the bat, it asks you for login information. That login information matches the user login for dash.virtualpbx.com, right? Same email address, same password, same account name. So just easier to assign the create the web phone directly on the user. All right, user features, caller ID number. You can only enable this on a user that has their own phone number. So when you click enable, then you select a phone number, you click on save changes. What this does, it means that this phone number, right, this 323 phone number becomes Aaron's outbound caller ID. Right? Now the default, right, if I set this back to no or turn it off, right, if Aaron picks up one of his VoIP phones and makes an outbound call, the system will default him to the 408 number I have selected under my dashboard page. Right. When I turn it on, it instead becomes the 323 number when he makes an outbound call. Virtual text, this is a newer feature. This allows for texting on your account. If you don't see this feature on your users, then you're going to want to talk to our account services team. They'll need to verify that you're basically what to go about in terms of getting that feature enabled on your account. Sorry, I can't talk today. But once it's here, you turn it on, and then you select the phone number on your account. From the pull down, it's going to be one of your main numbers, a number on an auto attendant, or a number directly assigned to the user. And then you click on Save Changes. After you click on Save Changes, the user gets an email welcoming them to virtual text, and it has login information. Right. So at this point, it's possible you or some of your staff may have up to 3 sets of login information for VirtualPBX. Right. One for dash.virtualpbx.com / the webphone.virtualpbx.net. Another one for the soft phone app, and a third one for virtual text. Virtual text you can access via a website, right, virtualtext.app, or you can download the app to your cell phone. You would log in, you can text that from that number. The main advantage of virtual text is you can share numbers between users. So for instance, if you select the main number, you can then share that main number with other staff members who have the virtual text feature enabled. They can then help monitor the texts coming in and out from your main number from your customers. Voicemail box. When you enable it, this is basically the default. Transcription is a plan-specific feature. It basically it listens to the email or the voicemail and types it out in the email notification to you. Right. The voicemail to email is the system's going to send you an email saying, hey, you have voicemail. In the body of the email has a date, the time, phone numbers involved, and then there'll be an MP3 attachment. So you can just double click on it and listen to it. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot hold any more. By default, right, so this kind of setup, there's 3 ways for you to listen to your voicemails, right? One is the email, but that doesn't allow you to delete messages, right? That just allows you to listen to them. The other 2 methods, you can call in over the phone, right? You just need the voicemail box number and the PIN number, and then you can listen to those messages over the phone. and you'll also have the option to delete those messages. And the third way is logging into dash.virtualpbx.com. And for your standard users, they would be defaulted to their voicemail tab. For an admin, they would first need to click on the menu icon and then go to the user portal, and then they'll be on their voicemail tab. You can listen to the messages there as well as delete them there. Now, if staff, for whatever reason, if people are not checking a particular voicemail box regularly, and you're like, well, I'm tired of people complaining about a voicemail box being full, you can always, on a user, on this page here, click on this box. And what that means is when the system sends out the email to this user with the voicemail message, it just deletes it from their voicemail box. Now, that means the user can only ever check their voicemails via email, right? If they call in, the message has already been deleted. Likewise, if they go into their user portal, it's already been deleted, right? So they can only ever check their voicemails via email. So if there's a problem with their email at some point, they may be losing voicemail messages. Follow Me is a feature mostly used for people with multiple devices, and this allows you as an admin to determine how those devices ring. Right, so when you first, here, let's disable it here on Aaron, and we'll get it back to its base form. Right, so when you enable it, it looks like this. Right now, if a call comes to Aaron, nothing is going to ring because both of his devices have checked under Do Not Ring. So you would first uncheck which devices you want them to make use of. Now you have these little green bars here. You click and drag them to the right to give them a ring duration. Up here along the top, you have timestamps. Right? The last one you can edit. It defaults to 120, but I can change that to 60, for example. Right? And so now I'm saying, hey, when calls come into Aaron's user, right? So someone enters Aaron's extension number, for instance. Right? Calls come in, it's going to ring both of his devices for the same amount of time. I can click this distribute button here on the left. And now I'm saying for the first 30 seconds, it's ringing this soft phone device. And if he doesn't pick up there, then it rings up to this demo device for the next 30 seconds. Right, now these are still slidable, right? So I can click and drag them so I can have overlap if I want to. And any changes you make, you then click on Save Changes. Right, if you've like 4 or 5 devices on a user, you can you don't have to uncheck Do Not Ring on all of them. Right, you can say nope. I only want these 2 devices to ring, and these other 3 are for something else. Fax box. Users can have their own fax box if you want them to. Right, so this is in addition to your main fax box, or even instead of your main fax box if you don't want a general fax box. Now, when you click Enable, you'll have the option to select a spare number, right? So use one of your spare numbers, buy a single new number, or you can assign an extension. I recommend using one of the phone number options, right? When you do that, this Aaron here can send and receive faxes with no problems, right? In terms of receiving, people just need to send it to this 213 phone number, right? And then in terms of sending out, when he sends it out, right, he does the email like everyone else does, but the caller ID will use the phone number that's associated with the fax box on his user. So this 213 phone number, right? If you select an extension number and Aaron tries to fax out, it's going to error because an extension number is not long enough or is not appropriate for outbound caller ID, right? It's not a phone number, so it's going to fail. The other concern about using an extension number is electronic fax services may not allow their users to send faxes to an extension number. Right? The ones I've seen typically just say enter a phone number and that's it. There's no provision for adding additional digits for an extension number. Conference Bridge, you click Enable, and as an admin, the only thing you really need to do is enter a PIN number for them, and then click on Save Changes. Your staff members can change their PIN numbers themselves under the user portal. You do have the option here for enable video conferencing, and that's for in-house use, right? So anyone on your account would be able to make use of video conferencing if you enable it. Anyone outside, right? So like your clients or your customer or vendors, right? They wouldn't be able to make use of it unless you added them as a user on your Dash account. Call forwarding, you have off, on, or failover mode. Now, your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own, either via the user portal or directly on their web phone. Failover mode is something a system admin has to set up. You choose a mobile or desk phone, then you enter the phone number, +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. What failover mode does is when, say, Aaron's VoIP phone, if it goes offline for whatever reason, right, becomes unregistered, and a call comes into his user, the system will automatically forward the call to the phone number you designated. Now, if you have staff members have multiple devices, right? So let's say Aaron here has both a VoIP phone and that demo device, which could be a cell phone, then I don't need to really bother with the follow me or the forwarding because I already have follow me enabled. It'll get to his cell phone eventually anyway. Customize call recording. So when you first enable it, it looks like this, right? And basically the system wants you to tell it what kind of calls am I recording, right? Inbound internal, right? Coworker Bob called Aaron. Do I want to record it or not? Right. Inbound external, customer Mary called Aaron. Probably want to record that. Right. Outbound internal, that's Aaron calling coworker Bob. And then outbound internal is Aaron calling customer Mary. So we often see this kind of setup, right? The external ones, or we see all of them, typically speaking. And then you would click on Save Changes. Now, your account includes some level of account data storage as part of your monthly plan price. I believe it for the newer plans, it's like 2 gigabytes or something like that. I don't know what the overage is, so you'd want to double check with our account services team if that's a concern for you. If you have heavy call volume and you're recording every call, you may want to look at AWS storage, right? So basically you need to have an AWS account. You talk with our account services team to enable AWS integration on your account. That allows you to link your Dash account to AWS directly. And so that way you can have your call recording stored with AWS versus with us. At high volumes, that is much cheaper than with us, at least from what I've seen of their pricing. Music on hold. You can choose to have your users have their own hold music if you want them to, right? You would click enable, and then you would upload a file, right? .wav.mp3 recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. We just click upload, find the file, click the up arrow icon, and then save changes when it's done. And again, that's after Aaron here presses hold on his VoIP phone. So for instance, you can have your sales team members have one set of hold music, right, with the latest promotions or special deals, whereas, say, your support team would have a different set of hold music talking about, hey, go to our website and our help page site to look at our FAQs, that sort of thing. Do not disturb. When you click enable and click on save changes, that means this user is not accepting phone calls, right? Everything's going to voicemail, or they might be getting skipped if they're in groups or queues. Hot desking is a VoIP phone feature, and it's basically designed for a shared office environment or for hybrid scheduling. When you enable it, you need to give a hot desk ID, 4 digits, and then you can choose if you want to require a PIN number or not. So typically I recommend if you're making use of 4-digit extensions and you're going to have hot desking, make their hot desk ID their extension number. It's pretty much the easiest thing to do. Click on save changes. So Aaron comes into the office on Tuesday. He sits down at desk number 2. He picks up the VoIP phone there. He hits *11. The system will then ask him for his hot desk ID. He enters that on the phone, and then the system will tell him calls will now be sent to this device, right? So the rest of his workday, he's getting calls to his user are going to ring to the phone he's sitting at. The end of his day, he picks up the phone, he hits *12 to turn off hot desking, he goes home. Right? The next time he comes into the office, say he sits down at desk number 7 instead, right? Because say Angela's sitting at desk number 2, he picks up the phone at desk 7, star 11, enters his hot desk ID. Now calls are coming to him at desk number 7. All right, next up, groups, sometimes referred to as hunt groups or ring groups, right? Departments. This is an included feature. Up here at the top, you click on Add Group. You give it a name and you give it an extension number, right? You don't reuse extension numbers. It'll give you an error. That's why you have the one to search. You have a find one here. This allows you to see the existing extension numbers, or you can just do a search. And then you click and drag your staff members over to the right that you want to be in the group, and then you would click on Create Group. Once a group is created, you can click on its name, right? So you can change the name at any time. And then you have group call attempts. This is how many times the system's going to offer a call to the members of the group. Got little arrow icons here to increase or decrease that as necessary. You also have the option here to delete the groups. If you make any changes, click on Save Changes. Next up, you have the members box. So I have these 5 members, and I have this set up here where I'm ringing them all at the same time for the same amount of time. Now, Aaron here has Follow Me enabled. Calls from the group that ring to Aaron, they're going to ring both of his devices at the same time. It's not going to use it ignores the Follow Me setting on the user. Right? Even if you have Do Not Ring set up on Follow Me, right? Calls from the group, ignore that completely. They're going to ring. Now, if you need to add more people, you can click down here and add them in. Oh, actually, that's not, there we go. Right. Now, I would then need to click and drag the bars to the right to match. I do have timestamps across the top here. It defaults to 120 seconds. Right. I can change that if I want. If I want calls to ring in a particular order, I can click Distribute. So now it's always going to ring Bob first. Right. So call comes in, rings Bob, he answers. If a second call comes into the group while Bob is on that first call, right? That second call, it's still being offered to Bob for 17 seconds before it rings to Aaron. Right? So Bob and Aaron now are on call. Call number 3 comes in. It has to wait for 34 seconds before it's offered to me. Right? So that's why you might want to do some sort of overlap in terms of the call, so that way those later callers aren't waiting on hold. Right? Basically, just because Bob is on a call, the system does not skip him. Now, if I need to change the order, right? Let's say Ariel needs to be first, Bob needs to be last because he's working on a project. Now, as of right now, I haven't changed the order, right? Bob's still starting at 0 seconds. But if I click Distribute, now Ariel's at the beginning, Bob's at the end. And again, I can still click and drag as necessary if I need to. Now, 17 seconds, right? If Ariel has cell phones, I'd probably want to extend that out to 30. I'd make sure he's got enough time to answer. And if you need to make any changes, click on Save Changes. If you need to remove users, right, you just click on the remove icon. Now, this is a bad setup because I have a break here. And also I have a break down here. So I would want to click Distribute, for example. And that way, everything is at least in order. Right, groups have to have at least one extension. You can add additional if you need to have multiple extensions for a group. Right, like 2 groups merged, and you're like, well, I don't need 2. I can just, move the people into the one group and then put both extensions on the remaining group. Groups can have their own phone numbers or multiple phone numbers if you want. Just like before, you can add from spare or buy new, and then you would click on Save Changes. And then we have group features. Ringback essentially lets you put hold music while your inbound caller is waiting for someone to pick up. So call comes into a group, right? Gets sent out to the users in their group. Their phones start to ring. That ringing sound is then piped back to your inbound caller, ringback, so they know that their call is going through. right? If instead you enable this feature, you can upload your own file, .wav.mp3 recorded in mono, and have that play back instead of that ringing sound, right? So find the file on your computer, click Save Changes, or you can choose from an existing file from the pull down. Next action, to me, this is the most important feature. When you enable it, you're basically gives you the option to tell the system what to do if no one answers this call, right? So none of your group members answer the call. Where are you sending them? This pull down, basically, you can select pretty much anywhere else on your account. You can send it back to your main menu on your virtual receptionist. You can send it to another call queue or different group. You can send it to a specific phone. You can send it to a specific person, right? One of your staff members. Or you can send it to a voicemail box, which is typically the most commonly chosen. And then you'll click on Save Changes. Allow call forwarding. If you enable this, that means you're allowing your users to make use of call forwarding. If your users have multiple devices, especially if they have their cell phones on there, you don't really need to enable it. Caller ID prepend, if you enable this, this is for VoIP phones. This allows you to put additional text or numbers in front of the caller ID that's displayed on your staff members' VoIP phones. Now, I recommend you make use of one or the other, not both. And basically, it just gives your staff members a heads up about what the call is about, right? Especially if you have people in multiple groups or have multiple roles. All right, so now that you have users in groups, we'll go to main number. Once it loads. The main number page can sometimes take a while to load. First up, you have your main company numbers, right? So these 7 numbers, all behaving the same fashion, right? They're all going to follow these rules that we are setting up here. Down here at the bottom, you can add from spare or buy new numbers, right? So if you're buying numbers, you can add multiple. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about under local, adding local numbers. I think I kind of skipped over that. You need to know the area code. Any area code, including the toll-free prefixes, you can get this message basically saying this area code is exhausted, right? There's no readily available phone numbers. My recommendation is use your favorite search engine and do a search. In this case, I would do area code 310 overlay, right? Hopefully there's an overlay for it. And in this case, it's 424. So then I do a search for that area code and I'll see that there's many numbers available. I can click add, by numbers, and now it's being added to my account. And just like before, if I, added it but didn't click on by numbers and walked away, it was possible someone could have taken that number. Now, any place you have a phone number, you have this little gear icon. You can select caller ID, right? So you can set the outbound CNAM from that number, and also turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAME, right? So that way the people's names show up on your staff members' phones. E911, each phone number you can set up with its own E911 address. This then allows you to assign the particular phone numbers to your VoIP devices so that each VoIP device can have a different E911 address, right? So you have remote staff, you say, okay, this phone number has the correct address for your location. For E911 purposes only, I'm assigning it to your VoIP phone, right? So that means they call 911 from their VoIP device, the right address gets transmitted to emergency services instead of going to your default headquarters address. Prepend, VoIP phone feature. You can add text in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. Oops, sorry. Now, if you don't want to use a number, right, you would unassign it. So let's just unassign a couple of these numbers here. Now, these unassigned numbers, right, they're not removed from my account. I just removed them from this location on my account. So now they're spare numbers, right? So I could add them back to a user or to a group, for example. But once you have main numbers, then you have office hours strategy. You have your choice of being open 24/7 or setting up custom office hours. If you choose custom office hours for each day of the week you're open, put a check mark in front of the day of the week. and then set your open hours in 24-hour or military time. So you see here, I'm open Monday through Friday from 8:30 until 4:30 PST, right, Pacific time. Now down here, I have the option to say my system closes for lunch every day that I'm open at the same time, right? I just put a check mark here. I set my lunch hours in that 24-hour or military time, and then I click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if I'm closed for holidays, put a check mark here. Then over here to the right, click where it says Add Holidays. I have the options for single day, date range, and advanced. Clicking on any of those will create a new row. Single day, I have like here for New Year's Day. You give it a name, choose the month and the date, save changes. Date range, like Christmas holiday, give it a name, start date, end date, save changes. Now, there's no year indicator on these holidays. So for date range, as a precaution, we recommend against having a date range that includes New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Right? So you see here, this ended on New Year's Eve, and then I had a separate one for New Year's Day. Advanced, right here for Thanksgiving, you give it a name, you choose the month. This pull down, which unfortunately doesn't show up on the streaming software, you have first through fifth as well as last to choose from, and then you choose a day of the week, and then save changes. If you want to remove a holiday, you click on the little trash icon, and then the save changes. And then we have incoming call handling. So these are for my main numbers. How do I want the system to handle calls during my open hours, during my after hours, or during my holidays? Right, now I can switch these around if I want to. Now, these first three options, right? So this option, oops, almost double clicked. So this one, and this one, those three will always show up. Right, this fourth one shows up under a couple circumstances. The most common is if your account has multiple auto attendants and you made one or more of those auto attendants available in the main menu, then this option would show up. If there's an advanced call flow on your account, so like you had some custom work done with our account services team, that would also show up here. There's a few other features like select route where that would come into play. Now, again, you have these 3 times of day. So you can have different routing options for them. First up, calls come in going to my virtual receptionist. This is a link, which you can click on. You can open up that big box. Over here on the left, this is your main menu. This is what people can press on their phone to navigate through your phone system. Down here, you've got add route, right? This gives you another row. First pull down, you have 0 through 9, as well as the star key, and then you have a default action. And then the second pull down is where are you sending it? Now, you obviously have to have things created here in order to have the options go there, right? That's part of why I started with users and groups, because those are the base things that you would need to have. But once you've added users, you can have a menu option go to a specific user, right? Offers to their phones, it would make use of follow me calling if you have that enabled on the user. If they don't pick up, it would go to that user's voicemail box. And if we scroll further down, call queues is an add-on feature or upgrade feature off of existing plans. You'd want to talk to our account services team if you're interested in that. They are an advanced version of groups, right? Groups are an included feature, right? Can have basic routing, right? Either ring them all, ring them in the set order, that's it, right? Queues have things like round robin routing, which means that we equalize out over time, or whoever, or most idle, who's been waiting the longest, that sort of thing. Devices, you can have a menu option ring a specific phone. Main thing to remember, if that phone doesn't have its own voicemail, then the inbound caller may get frustrated and just hang up. You can have a menu option go to a particular voicemail box. You can have a particular media file play. This would be useful for like hours of operation or directions. However, once the media file is done playing, the call ends. And then any advanced call flows, this would be if you're making use of submenuing. If you don't need a menu option, you can then click on X and to remove it. Over here on the right, you have your greeting options. The greetings is where you say thank you for calling. Typically, you say your organization name. But the main thing is you want to give directions to your caller, right? You want to tell them what to press to get to whatever people they need to speak to. First up, you have text to speech. This allows you to type in up to 250 characters. Now, it does not count spaces. You can sometimes get larger files to go through, but 250 works consistently. Now, when you type it in, you click update and save changes. The system names the file for you, and it will reuse the same file name multiple times, right? So in this case, it would be main, right? Main, open hours, menu, and then TTS for text to speech. Now, so let's say I had this greeting in place, I didn't like it, or I forgot something, and I add text to it, right? And then I click update and save changes. Now I have two files called main open hours menu TTS. My recommendation is if you make use of text-to-speech greetings, over here on the left, there's a greetings tab, which we'll be getting to shortly. Go there after you create the text-to-speech greeting and rename the file, just so that you have something that you can recognize. So you can differentiate between them. Upload your own file, .wave.mp3 recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Choose the file on your computer and then click update, save changes. Choose from an existing file. Well, you see here I have a main open hours menu TTS, right? This pull down will show every media file on your account. Main greetings, voicemail greetings, hold music files. That's why you want to have file names that are relatively easy for you to recognize. You can record it over the phone. Now, the system says pick up a phone registered on this account. That means pick up a VoIP phone on the account. Now, if for some reason that's not viable for you, for instance, like you just signed up for us and you ordered physical phones and they haven't arrived, right? Because literally it's the same day. What you would want to do is down here under settings, and where it says allow outside recording, turn that on. What that does is allow you to record your main greeting from an outside phone number, right? So you can call from a cell phone or landline. Right? By default, it's off as a security feature, so that way not anyone can just randomly come in and change your main greeting on you. Now, you still need this PIN number. This PIN number only works during this time of day, right? So during my open hours, right? So if I called on Saturday, this PIN number no longer works, right? Because my open hours are Monday through Friday, right? 8:30 to 4:30, right? Even if I called at 5 p.m., would not work on any day. Recording over the phone. So if you just signed up with us and you call your main number right off the bat, the system will tell you that the greeting for this menu has not been recorded yet. And then we'll prompt you for a PIN number, right? And then walks you through recording your main greeting over the phone. If in this instance where I have a text-to-speech greeting in place, right, I can call in, and when I hear that greeting play, I can enter this PIN number still. The system will recognize it and then walk me through recording it over the phone. If you already have a file in place, right, and you record over the phone, the system doesn't give you a chance to name the file over the phone, so it just reuses the existing file name, right? So main open hours menu TTS, that's what it would be called, but it's going to have my voice on it now instead. And so whatever content I had for that is now gone. That normally becomes an issue for people during like the major holidays, especially Thanksgiving, Christmas time. Professional recording services. When you click order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings, where you can order basically a professionally done recording from them directly. They email you the file, and you can then upload your file here. Click update, save changes. All right, now we're on to settings. Number of retries on misdial. This is how many times your inbound callers can make a mistake. Right, they automatically get one try, right? That initial try. So when you enter a 1 here, now they have 2 attempts, right? So call comes in, and let's say they press 5. The system will play the greeting a second time, and then they can enter in hopefully the correct menu option the second time around. Now, dialing, I usually recommend anywhere from like 1 through 3 for most people, or for most accounts. Dialing timeout, this is how much time the system listens for an additional button press. Right, so caller calls in, they press 5. In this case, the system's going to wait for 5 seconds, waiting to see if they enter in additional digits to transfer a call to an extension number. If they don't, right, then after 5 seconds, the number of retries kicks in. They play the main greeting again. Let's say the second time around, they press 7. The system waits 5 seconds and says, oh, well, now there's no more retry options. So it will then play, we did not recognize your entry, and then send it to the default action, right? In this case, going to rows. Now, if I remove that default action, on that last failed attempt, right, the system says we did not recognize your entry and says goodbye, ends the call. Now, if I don't want that message to play, right, we did not recognize your entry, goodbye, or transferring your call, then down here where it says allow or suppress playing of invalid entry, I can turn that on, and now that message will not play. Now that's good if you do have a default action and you're transferring the call to a person. That way it just rings to them and the inbound caller is satisfied. Allow dialing extensions under settings here. This is by default is on. This just means if someone enters an extension number that's valid, the system will transfer the call to that extension number automatically. Any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you need to click Save down here at the bottom. It will take you back to incoming call handling. And then you need to click Save Changes here. All right, so you're clicking Save twice. The second option here, this is designed as a live operator answer option, meaning the use case in mind was offer a call to a person or group of people so that they have a chance to answer the call first. If they're not able to pick up, then you send the caller to the virtual receptionist. So for instance, you can say select Aaron. So calls get offered to Aaron first. If he can't pick up, goes to virtual receptionist, right? This pull down, you have several things to choose from, right? Any users on the account, devices, right? You can send it to your group, right? So I can have like 5 people be offered the call, and then they go to the virtual receptionist. Now, since I'm on open hours, it's still my open hours menu, right? If instead I change this to after hours and I click on virtual receptionist, it's a different menu, right? And I likely would have a different greeting, etc. This third option here, it has one, you can send it to users, you can send it to groups, you can send it to a media file, ACD queues, etc. Basically, you can offer it to whoever you want. The extra option is the last one here, skip the voicemail. And then here I'm sending it to a specific voicemail box. So basically, for holidays, we often see this where people just say, hey, send callers to a specific voicemail box because we're not here. And then that fourth option is if you have your secondary auto attendants available or special routes. So for instance, I could have calls during my holidays go to my Spanish auto attendant for whatever reasons. But again, any changes you make here, make sure you do click on Save Changes. Your main conference number, you can have multiple conference numbers, so you can add from spare or buy new. You can also set up a custom text-to-speech greeting for your conference rooms. You would just click Enable and then type in the greeting, again, 250 characters. And then you click Save. Even if I left this disabled, right, when I call the conference room number, I say, the system comes on and says, welcome to the conference, and then prompts the people to enter the conference room number and their PIN number. The main fax box, you can only have the one number, which is why I don't have the option to add more. But I can click Edit Fax Box. And here, I can enter in an email address under the inbound notification. So what happens is when a fax comes into the system, Rose here gets an email letting her know, hey, fax has come in. Here's the date, the time, phone numbers involved. Here's a PDF. Right? She can then open the PDF and view the fax. Now, if someone dials my fax box number, say from their cell phone, right? They hear fax tones, they hang up. Rose is going to get an email here letting you know that there's a failed inbound fax attempt, right? It'll have the date, the time, etc. Sometimes in the body of the email, it has caller ID. So if it says wireless number, right, next to a caller ID or phone number, that lets you know it was a misdialed number. Otherwise, you might want to check with the other person who's faxing to you if you recognize the number and go from there. This email permissions field, this is designed to put your company email domain here, right? So for us, it would be at virtualpbx.com. And what that means is anybody at VirtualPBX, right, who has virtualpbx.com email address, they can send a fax out on this account, even if they're not a user on the account, right? So, if you're abccleaners.com, you could put that domain here instead, and everybody at your company can then send a fax out, even if they're not a user on the account. And then you would click on Save Changes. Auto attendance, this is a plan-specific feature, right? So available on some plans, not others. This allows you to create secondary attendance. This would be, or what's commonly we see this for, is for people who want to make use of submenuing, right? 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, sort of thing. And then those additional attendants have their own greeting and their own menu options, right? So then, in the language case, right, then the Spanish attendant has a Spanish greeting and goes to Spanish-speaking staff members, right? You can have yet another set of attendants below that if you want it as well. The other use case we see is for people who have multiple businesses, right? So each of those businesses have their own phone number, their own main greetings. They just happen to be answered calls by the same staff members, right? Or they wanted them on the same account just to make their billing issue, more consolidated, right? Instead of having different billing dates for different accounts, they can all have it at the same time, etc. Now, up here at the top, you would click on Add Attendance. You give it a name. You give it an extension number. Click on Create Attendant. The extension number is not something like your customers would ever really know, but your staff members can make use of it to transfer calls to the correct attendant, right? So like if a Spanish-speaking customer call got to me and I don't speak Spanish, I would, and it's obvious that they don't speak English. I can say, hold on, let me transfer you. And then I would transfer them to my Spanish auto attendant. So that way my Spanish-speaking coworkers can help the customer. But basically, once you've given a name and an extension number, you click on Create Attendant. Once it's here, you can click on the name. And by default, it shows up like this, right? Unavailable in main menu, meaning it's a standalone, right? You can always delete an attendant if you don't need it. You can click on it where it says unavailable in main menu, and now it's available in main menu, right? So this is if you want to make use of a submenu option. So for instance, if I go down to Spanish, right, you see here it's available in main menu because I would want it as a menu option, right? Because I'm giving inbound callers the option for 1 for English and 2 for Spanish. Auto attendants can have their own phone number or phone numbers, right? So you can always buy new or add spare. And for their phone numbers here, right, you can click on the gear icon to update their caller ID, E911, and prepend. Auto attendants can have multiple extensions if you want them to. And then we have a little wrench icon here under settings. And you see here, I have open hours, after hours, and holidays. That follows what we set up under the main number, right? So your secondary attendants have the same hours of operation as your primary, right? The main numbers. But beyond that, right, you would click on the virtual receptionist, you set up the menu options, the greeting, etc. You would click Save and then Save Changes. All right, the devices tab shows all your devices on the account. Red means it's unregistered, meaning we can't send calls to it. We don't know why, right? For soft phones or web phones, probably they haven't logged in. Could be network, all right? Black devices, that means under the enable column, you've turned them off. You can always click here to turn them on. Green device means we can send a call to that device. Up here at the top, you can add devices, right? So phone, cell phone, soft phone. Now that soft phone, on the devices tab, you don't have the option to click on the toggle, right? That toggle only shows up when you add the soft phone directly to a user. But here, this is if you want to add a third-party soft phone, like you're using someone else's soft phone application. You give it a name, you would copy and paste the SIP username, and then click on the SIP password box, copy and paste that. Please do not change it. Then click on create device, and the SIP username, the SIP password, and the realm, those are the three pieces of information you need to program your third-party soft phone. For hardware phones, if you click on the edit, the wrench icon under edit, you may want to check under advanced, and under audio, you want to make sure you have G711A and G711U over here to the right under selected. For the VirtualPBX soft phone, you want Opus, which is this one here. For any other soft phones, you probably just want G711A or G711U, unless you're running into problems, in which case then you can try Opus. Oh, oops, I wasn't done there. Under advanced, the other thing I want to show is the emergency caller ID, right? This is where you would select a specific phone number. So that way you can have the correct address associated. Oh, this one doesn't have an address. But for any phone number that you set up an address, you can then associate it to the relevant phone, right? So that way it has the right address for where that phone's located. All right, greetings tab shows all your greeting files on the account. Hold music files, voicemail greetings, main greetings. Up here at the top, you can click add to upload a new file. You would just give it a name, find the file, click on create greeting. It will upload it here. It's not adding it here. You're not adding it to any like voicemail box or to your main greeting. It's just now available on your list, your pull down lists. Right, you have the file name, you have the source, right? TTS, text to speech. Upload means you uploaded the file. Recording means it was recorded over the phone. This play column here, you can play back the files to see if they're relevant. Right? If they're not, then you can get rid of them. If for some reason the playback file doesn't work or icon, you have to download it so you can download it to your device and see if your on-device media player will play the file properly. And then you have the little wrench icon here. This is where you can change the name of a greeting to something recognizable. Like I could change this to, right, here's your option to delete a greeting that's not relevant. Otherwise, you would just save changes. Numbers tab, this defaults you to your numbers in use. So it shows where your numbers are assigned. Again, you can't assign here or unassign here. It just shows you where they are. You've got the little gear icon here, so you can update E911, caller ID, prepend. The spare numbers tab shows the numbers you're not currently using. If you want to get rid of a number, then you would click on the little box in front of it, and then you see the option here to delete show up. You click on delete, you confirm the deletion, and now you have removed them from your account. You can add new numbers, right? Local or toll-free, clicking on buy. Port starts the port process, and that just means you're moving a phone number from one carrier to another. So say from AT&T to VirtualPBX. You give it a name, you choose local toll-free, and then it wants you to upload a PDF copy of your bill, right, from AT&T in this case. Basically, you then fill out the form as you go through, or the following pages. At base, we need to copy the bill and we need a completed and signed letter of agency or LOA. In that port process, there's an option to download a blank one. You can also find it on our website, a blank LOA. You can, or if you go into chat, our support team can send that to you as well. Basically, in the port request, we'll need what your current carrier has on file for you in terms of the company name, the address. BTN will be asked for you, which is the billing telephone number. If you're only porting one number, that's your BTN. If you're porting multiple, you'd want to talk with your current carrier to determine what a BTN is for those numbers. In some cases, some carriers require a PIN number to port out. That's something you would have to get from them. Some of them have it right on their bill. Others, you have to call them. That's typically, we see that mostly with cell phone numbers, but other carriers do require that as well. Toll-free numbers basically take a week, right? 3 to 5 business days if everything is correct. Local numbers have a wide variance. It can be a day or two. It could be several weeks. It just depends on the carrier involved. If there's a rejection, we double check to make sure there wasn't a typo somewhere on our part. If there's like multiple addresses involved, then we will check against each address. But once we've exhausted anything that could have been avoided on our side, or if there's extra options, then we communicate the rejection reason to you. At that point, you need to talk to the current carrier to find out what the correct information is in order to port out. And that's been, in the port process, it does ask you for like a target date. Make sure you set that to the future, right? Putting it on the same date, it's not going to happen. So just save yourself a little bit of a headache there. All right, voicemail boxes. This shows all the voicemail boxes on your account. Anything that has entry under the user column here, right? These were user-created voicemail boxes, right? Created at the same time the user was. Up here at the top, you can create your own voicemail boxes. So you just give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. You would click on Create Voicemail Box. You would do that for like your groups, right? So that way it's not when the next action is invoked, you can set it to the group voicemail box versus going to a specific person's voicemail box. Right, when you click on the wrench icon next to any voicemail box, you can see the name, the voicemail box number, and the PIN number, right? So that's what you would use to check voicemails over the phone, right? Or update the greeting over the phone. Under Advanced, Greeting Media, you can upload a file or select anything that's already on the system. Right, find the file, click Upload, etc. Media file, this is your normal greeting, right? Normal voicemail greeting. Temporary file, this is for vacation out of office. So if you have something selected under temporary, it's going to play, right? The media file will not. Only one of these two will play. And if temporary is selected, that's the one that plays. Once you put temporary back to none, then the media file will play. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes have one recipient built in, right? The email address used for login, that automatically gets the email for any user. For any voicemail box you create on your own, you'd want to come here, click Add New Recipient, and then enter the email address. Right? If you only need to add the one, then you just click on Save Changes. If you need to add multiple, click on the Add button and enter another email address in a new row. And then we have options. So once a voicemail box has a recipient and has a greeting media file in place, you can click on the box in front of Already Set Up. And then you'd want to double check to make sure you have attached emails, voicemails to emails, and or if you want the delete notification option there as well. Call logs shows your call history on the account. So you see here we had a call come in today, and it's a green arrow to the right means it's inbound call. We'll switch over to this month and see. So here, a yellow arrow to the left is an outbound call. I think I have another one down here. Right, so here I see Aaron used this device to make that outbound call. Little fire hydrant icon here. When you click on it, it will create an email for you, already addressed to support@virtualpbx.com. Please type in the body of that email why you're sending the email into us, right? Give us the context. In the body of the email, the system will already put in the technical details, but that doesn't tell us why you're sending the call to us necessarily. You have the option to download any of these. It downloads it as a CSV, so if you're good with spreadsheets, you can get some more information out of this. Under custom, you can set your date range, right? So you can go back, oops. For instance, I can go back to January 1st and filter, so now I can see January's calls, right? Then I can download the whole thing, so that way I have all of January. So the system will let you go back up to 12 months. If you need your call logs for compliance reasons, I would suggest you do this at least once a month. Our engineers can go back up to 18 months, but after that, the data is no longer available. So something to keep in mind. Feature codes. I've already talked about a couple of these. These are just ways for your Dash users, or actually your VoIP phone users, to make use of Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. Now, this is a page also in our support pages. You can also look for the phone commands cheat sheet, which has these feature codes and a little context help as well. The support page has a longer entries for each of these, so they're both useful. All right, so that's the dashboard. So let's go over to the menu icon. Oops. So blacklists, this is an included feature. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers you're blocking from reaching your account. You would click Edit Blacklists. If you don't already have a list, you would click on Add up here at the top. Or you can click on an existing list, right? But you need to give the list a name. And then first, are you blocking anonymous calls or not, right? Default is off, right? But if you turn it on, you're saying if we don't, a call that doesn't have valid caller ID is coming in, they're getting a busy tone, right? If you leave this off, that means they come through. Beyond that, you come down here where it says add number, you click, and then you put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And you keep clicking add until you're done adding numbers. Once you're done, you would click on save. You click on back to settings, and you make sure your list is over here under selected. So I can click and drag these over, and then I click update. Now, if I don't want a list to be active, right, then I can just move it back over, and then I click update again. But now any number on these two lists under my selected column, they get busy tone when they try to call any of my VirtualPBX numbers. Faxes, this takes you to your fax manager. So you have the inbound fax bot or page or tab. You can get to any fax box on the account. The inbound fax, basically you can see the faxes that came into this account. Looks like we haven't had any recent faxes come in. The outbound fax tab, similar idea. You're just getting to only the outbound faxes, and you would see any results here. Hopefully you see success. If you see failures, there's a little icon here on the far right that you could click on that might give you more information. Not always. But basically, if you see a failure on the outbound fax tabs, that means there was a problem when we tried to communicate with the other fax number, right? So maybe the number was busy, or maybe we connected, but something interrupted the transmission, right? Like someone picked up on the other side. Email to fax logs, anything you see here means the system had a problem processing the fax request, right? You see a little thumbs down. I see the email address involved. I see the format that they used on their outbound leg, the date, the time. I got a little eyeball icon here. I can click on that, and I can see the error message. In this case, it's this person or this email address is not a user on the account, and that's why it failed. The most common thing we see is invalid attachments, or no valid attachments, excuse me. And that just means someone tried to fax something that wasn't a PDF or TIFF file. Number manager, that just takes you to your spare numbers page. Reports, this would actually open up a new tab and take you to the advanced reporting feature, which is a plan specific feature. This allows you to create your own reports. If you want to see this better under our YouTube channel, you want to go to the advanced reporting demo, and you can see what can be done there. And if you're interested, you'd want to talk to our account services team. Voicemail, this will let you get to any voicemail box on the account. So you can see their voice messages. So like, especially if a voicemail box is full, you can then look at it. When you click on the box in front, you can move a voicemail to another voicemail box, as well as here is where you would change its status, right? So if you wanted to delete a message. Beyond that, you see the date, the time, the phone numbers involved. You can play it back, you can download it, etc. SMS registration, this is new, but basically this tells you what it's about. This is where you would start your registration. This is so if you want to make use of texting. And then this will give you your registration status, basically if it's been submitted, in process, completed, etc. Call center opens up a new tab, takes you to callcenter.virtualpbx.com. This is if you're making use of call queues or the call center feature. Right, so this is where, and these are the advanced versions of groups, right? So you can have things like round robin and routing. Your queue members, right? They can mark themselves away, right? So like if they go to lunch, they can mark away so that way their phones won't ring or be part of the cycle. When calls come in, they can end their session, meaning they're not on duty, right? So that means they're not getting offered calls. There's advanced features also where if a manager is in a queue, they can eavesdrop on a call, right? So they can listen in and then whisper to their staff member to help them out, or even barge in and take control of the call. If you go to our YouTube channel and under videos, do a search for ACD Queues Pro demo. You can see what the queues are like. Dynamic caller ID, this is a plan specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change your outbound caller ID. So for here, for instance, you would click on create new rule. I'm just going to click on edit an existing rule. So first you give it a name. Then in this pull down here, you select a number on your phone, on your account, right? So one of your VirtualPBX numbers. And then in this case, I created a rule based on the area code where I said when my staff members dial 408, automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 408 phone number, right? And then I click on save changes. The other one I have is up here, where whenever my staff members dial *550, right, then they enter area code and phone number that they're calling, the system will automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 323 phone number. Right? The idea here is you're trying to make your numbers, or your callers, look like a local call. Monitor is another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff members. Right? Doesn't matter what device they're using. It will show like if they're on an active inbound calls up here, they each would have a blue box showing you, what the phone number of the inbound caller and who they're speaking to and what device is being used. The parking calls, each one would have their name or the caller ID and the parking spot number, so you could pick them up. You can see by device or by employee who's available or who's busy, etc. Recording Manager, this will open up a new tab, take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. It uses your dash login to log in, and you can view your call recordings. Right? You can play them back, you can download them, you can delete them. If you make use of AWS storage, it would actually show you the AWS storage site where you can play them back and download them, but I don't think you can currently delete them there. You'd have to log into AWS directly. Webhooks is another plan-specific feature. This is programming. This allows you to link Dash to other software. So if you go to our YouTube channel and look up the Introduction to Zapier webinar, this will give you an idea of what can be done. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code and of what we have done in linking Dash to other software. So like we've linked it to like Slack, for example. Right, when you click on new webhook, basically you fill out this form, you click on create webhook, and then you have to have something on the other end to attach it to. If you're interested in this, you actually want to talk to our sales team because they would have some more information. But again, you can look at that developer.virtualpbx.com or that Introduction to Zapier webinar. And then lastly, we have the user portal. Every user on your account has access to their own user portal. Right? It defaults them to their voicemail tab so they can see their voicemails. Right? They can listen to them, they can download them, they can change the status. Call history, they can view their own call history, they can change the date range. And then filter and see their calls. The fax tab only works for users that have their own fax box, but then they can see their fax history. Contact list is everything within the Dash account. Right, so all the other users, the groups, the auto attendants, etc. This is not something your staff members can edit in any fashion. It's just a view only. Obviously, your admins technically are changing it whenever they add new users or groups, etc. The conference tab. Over here on the right side, this is where your staff members would adjust their PIN numbers for both themselves as a moderator as well as for anyone who joins their conference. And then they have the options here. Do people join muted and deafened? Are they playing entry and exit tones? When you're in a conference itself, if they're on this page, they can click on the little plus icon to invite other Dash users to a conference. They can lock the conference so other people cannot join, mute everybody, unmute everybody, and then end the conference call. Also, while on a call, every moderator and participant has their own little box here. So that way a moderator, for instance, can mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. And then the settings and devices tab. So this over here on the left, or I'm sorry, on the right. The user can see their own devices. But here, this is where your staff members would set up call forwarding on their own. They just put the check mark here, put +1 area code and phone number, and then click on save. And now call forwarding is on. Or I can just turn it back off. And that is everything. So I'm going to go ahead and end the stream since I don't see any questions waiting. I thank you for your time today.